This is Toasted Sausage, a Minecraft Redstoner that builds fully functioning robots and also has the world record for the fastest bamboo farm ever created inside of Minecraft. But most importantly, this man does not have a life.
Wait, what?
And so will I in a couple of next days, as I got challenged to build a medieval inspired build in only 72 hours. And as I said yes, the game finally begun. As I was running towards the emplacement of my next building, I thought that building a small medieval castle would be a great idea, and that if I could somehow build some kind of hill for my small castle to go on, that I'd definitely be able to win this competition. So with that in mind, I started planning the hill that my castle would go on and ended up with this skeleton that I would use as a basis for the hill. I then made this little hill, which wasn't the best, but looking back at the time constraint, it kinda made it more acceptable. This first quarter of my hill didn't make me so happy at the time, so I decided to watch a YouTube video on how to build a rocky section and ended up with this side that, while it lacks of any texturing, is still very impressive. This led me to spend all my diamonds on cobblestone at Toasted's shop in order to also do the back out of stone. I knew that messing this part up could make me lose this challenge, as this would be the main point of view of the castle. But with a few hours of placing blocks and courage, I made it look good, but again, it kinda missed textures. I then finally finished the last side and elevated the whole entire terrain in order to make it look prettier. This marked the end of the first day, with only 2 others to finish the castle. Day 2 started with me going in creative and building the first part of the castle. The walls were fun to make and had a consistent pattern, which made them easy to make. For these things over here, I tried putting polished diorite at first, but then I realized that polished sheep slate would look better on the castle. This led me to create the first of my 5 different towers I would make to accompany the build. Of course, since I was building this in Minecraft, I had some limitations. But it didn't stop me from building manticulations, which are these little openings on the wall of the castles that were used to throw stuff at the enemies. I also wanted to create a dungeon, which would have been the highest tower as it was the hardest one to reach and to escape from. These towers were the predecessors to the dungeons we all know and love, but due to severe lack of time, I sadly didn't add it. On the other side, something that I did add was a gatehouse that used to have smaller towers that I had to make bigger in order to fit with the rest of the castle. Inside of it, there's murder holes, which were holes that were used to throw stuff at the enemy in history. I'll also take this time to mention that I made the walls on the grassy sides higher than the ones protecting the stony sides, as I thought that it would make more sense for a castle to have more protection on its weaker sides than on its almost impossible to breach sides. By the way, before we go to the most important part of a castle, I just want to ask you guys to please subscribe if you end up enjoying this video, as my goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of summer. Thank you. So the most important part of a castle is the keep, which is where the lord or the king would live. I decided to make mine based off this video, which really helped me to learn more about the keep of a castle. On the first floor, soldiers would go to sleep on their beds, and they would also have more space to do their activities inside. Meanwhile, on the second floor, which is where the lord would live, there is a dining table, a place to speak to the lords, and finally the most important feature of all this castle, the historically accurate medieval toilet. The last day felt different, as I got really tired. Everything became sluggish, and even with me trying to do my best, I know that it just really wasn't really working out. But starting the day, I gave all I could, and made the interior for every single tower, with this one being my favorite. I also made arrow slits for all of them, and since I didn't make this big dungeon tower, I decided to make a more conventional dungeon in my keep. This led me to make a small chapel for the villagers. Inside of this chapel, there's a book explaining how a lady is about to face trial for witchery. It's simple: if she burns, then she's normal, but if not, she's a witch. Her burning pole can be found getting stacked with hay bales, ready to burn whenever. Finishing the chapel, I gave a house to the priest, who now lives behind the walls of the church, and I connected the roof of the chapel to the wall of the castle. As I became more and more tired, I could feel my work getting worse and worse, as making a single build became a long process of creating something in creative and then doing it in survival. But this didn't stop me from making a small shop inside of the castle that later got claimed by one of the judges for no apparent reason at all. My breaking point came when I did the house of a lumberjack that not only ended up being one of the worst things about my castle, but straight up just made me quit for the 4 hours that were left for this challenge. And as I closed the game, Sick of building, I wasn't proud of myself, as Toasted now had a serious advantage over me that would probably end up being what could make me lose. And as the time was ticking down, the game ended. And it was now time for the judges to choose which build was the best. So everyone prepared, but one of the judges, being the third member of this server, decided to go and judge alone without any tour, and gave a point to Toasted. Now, Toasted build was extremely gorgeous on the outside, but the inside was little to non-existent. Meanwhile, mine had more story and hidden details inside of the castle. But this wasn't over, and there were still 2 other judges that could turn the tide of this competition and potentially make me win. Right? This is Caleb, a Minecraft YouTuber that's friend with Toasted Sausage, and he just accepted to be our second judge. So when he finally entered our server, I knew that I had to impress him with tiny details inside of my castle in order to win. The tour started and he got to see small details I put in there, like the cauldron to baptize babies, the manticulations, and much more. After my tour ended, I felt like I finally had a chance to win, but Toasted still had this build to show off.
The only thing that actually does have an interior is the church.
Oh, cool.
And obviously it's also terraformed, so you go underneath.
Yeah, I'm going like underneath. That's gotta be so annoying to have done. Terraforming this entire thing.
And they live in shambles, like very, very difficult living conditions.
Poor guy.
There are 2 of them.
Dang, bro.
They live to work the dam.
What's
So, yeah,
in the dam?
Because the dam, like if it turns to day,
Oh, does the water flow through? That's kind of
yeah, the water goes down when it's like daytime.
With Toasted's tour ending, the judge now only needed to name who had the best build.
All right. The winner is Water. You win.
This was good and meant that me and Toasted were now tied, and more importantly, that I finally had a chance to win. I just really hope that the second judge will also appreciate the small details that I was able to put inside my castle, and choose my build to be the winning one.
I'm gonna have to give it to Toasted, bro. Like, yours has a lot of interior detail and stuff, but his is just like so good to look at.
Well, that kinda sucks.